Keep it simple, stupid.
Well, there are arguments about what the translation really is. But yes. You'll notice that there's no magnetic uncoupling on here too, because you're expected to be able to reach everything. We use manual uncoupling, and just visually that means I take all these Katies and I knock that stupid pin off there because I don't use them, and they look just a lot better not having them.
Oh, I agree. And I'm actually in HO scale. I saw something on YouTube, so I started cutting the, I guess you would call it what's supposed to represent the trip pin off, because I use the same thing. I use bamboo skewers to unhook HO cars.
This one here, if you ever want to make them, I solder these together out of brass. It's just a cup hook, piece of rod stock, brass rod stock. Take a Dremel with a cutoff wheel, make a slot, and then you just make a little spade and solder it in there. And these things are incredibly robust. The only problem I have with these things is people keep stealing them and taking them home so that they can copy them, which is fun. Amenities are always a good thing. You know, it's never a waste of money.
Oh no, they come in handy.
It just never is.
Right.
You know, make their life nice, and that keeps them from putting metal Coke cans across the rail.
Right, and then the pockets, throttle pockets,
Sure.
come in handy. I don't know how many times, I see somebody, their pockets right there, and they're still doing that. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Well, if people would, people were used to the whole idea of design in the amenities.
Right.
I'll tell you a downside about lower bench work, though. You do pay for it. When you gain more reach and you gain more ability to work with everything above, it comes at a cost, and that cost is wiring underneath.
Well, yeah.
Or getting underneath if you have to.
Right.
Most of my wiring is bus wired, and it's all biased towards the front, so at least I can sit down and go invest in these things. The auto mechanic people have these all over the place. These are really useful.
Right.
Especially when you're trying to turn around and work underneath here and stuff like that. Making the controls all not haphazard necessarily, but making them all uniform, all labeled.
Right.
It's time well spent. It makes everybody's life easier.
Exactly.
It makes it easier for me to teach somebody the railroad.
Correct. It didn't take me long to pick it up, actually, because he had done it that way. And when I ran it, that was my first time participating in one of the operating sessions here.
Here's a panic panel that we were talking about earlier about the duals. Is if for some reason the DCC system in here does go sideways, then all I have to do is just flip from radio to tether, and now I'm on a full analog. People can run the same area, full analog tethered throttle, and we don't have to stop.
Right.
So, it does sort of, it's belt and braces if your purpose is not necessarily for proto ops, but if it is for proto ops, anything you can do for reliability is well worth doing.
Oh yeah.
My rail joints are soldered. I have expansion joints engineered into the track, but the track is as monolithic as I can make it.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, bearing in mind the stuff does move.
Right. And you shouldn't solder every rail joint, as Brian's saying. You need to include some expansion and contraction in the track somewhere.
And sometimes, and very often when you first lay track, the track will tell you where that's going to be.
Correct. Yeah.
Because as many joints as I can solder, I'll do it. I am not one that believes in the sanctity of the mechanical joint.
Mm-hmm.
The soldered joint electrically is a lot more reliable. But there are places that it wants to move.
Yeah.
And if there are, then you do. Let's see if I can find one real quick, because most of this stuff is all soldered. But I'm trying to see if I can find one real quick to show you. basically what I'll do is I'll just take a rail joiner, solder it in on one side, leave it slip on the other, and then turn around and put a jumper around it.
Yeah.
So it's still electrically a soldered joint.
Right.
Mechanically,
Right.
it'll move. Oh, here's one. Yeah,
Okay.
this sort of thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes it, that's basically one end of the joiner soldered. One of them just is allowed to slip. It's allowed to move. This thing, because it's bent the way it's bent, will expand and contract. It'll move.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It basically springs nicely, and wherever that's kind of my expansion joint in there.
Yeah, and
it's a
you
reliability
will be
thing.
surprised at how much track can move.
Especially when the benchwork is new.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what's moving is not the rail because of thermal expansion. What's moving is the benchwork because of humidity expansion.
Right. So, yeah. And I did Kim Poznaniak's layout just recently on and posted on my YouTube channel. And we were talking about the technical side, the computer technology and everything. If you look on there, he has a guy sit down on his landing, and he's the dispatch. He can throw switches from there, and he can change signal aspects. And everybody talks to him by radio. So we're running it pretty much like the real railroad. And things go to heck, as per usual. I mean, I even mentioned that. We had 4 passing sightings and 6 trains running, and the dispatcher was pulling his hair out. But it's kind of neat. And then when we got there, his whole system had shut down. We thought we were going to have to cancel the operating session.
Oh, that would just.
As it turns out, it was a
single.
single engine derailed.
Oh yeah.
But he didn't have it separated in enough districts, power districts,
To be
It's
able to
good to
isolate
separate-
and hunt it down.
separate. Yeah, my layout, even though it's only 18 by 21, it's 2 decks. I have 7 different districts. So that if one district shuts down, I can still run the rest of the railroad in the meantime. So
Yeah,
that's
just-
one of your backup type of things.
When we were talking about nodal design, one of the things probably, that also gives you, each one of these nodes or a diorama box or whatever you want to call it, but each one of these isolates onto itself.
Right.
So it's relatively easy to do diagnostics on this because your brain is sort of thinking, okay, this is a node, okay. But this I can isolate from the rest of the railroad electrically and actually troubleshoot that way too.
Right.
You'll notice I've got these things floating around all over the place. Hanging up in the rafters is just a simple trouble light, and for running quick diagnostics in the middle of an op session,
It's a way to go. Right?
you might find out that you've got a wire on a frog is broken or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really quick to solder the thing back together. If I might just turn around and interrupt whoever's working in here for 5 minutes, I can turn around and get that knocked off during a section. But the key to it is quick diagnostics.
Right.
So have the stuff staged, have it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reliability thing, and thinking more in terms not so much of the ultimate in realism, but thinking in terms of making this thing easy to run, easy to operate,
Right.
user friendly. This becomes a big deal when you're doing proto ops versus you are making a piece of art in the manner of, say, George Sellius.
Right. Or Howard Zane, for that matter. Yeah.
Well, I was going to leave Howard out of it. But, Howard and I have known each other for years and years and years. I wasn't really going to. Yeah, we do have philosophical differences.
Well, yeah, I mean, but
Howard's
Howard's
That's
layouts
the beauty of this.
is artwork. I mean,
It is art.
Yeah.
It's absolute
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
This.
It's not built for operations, and I know that. But
One of the things about ops is that you got to have all the bits. You can't just turn around and pound this. Though, like I say, this railroad is only 4 years old. I started. It'll be 4 years old in October. It was October of 2019 when we started the first stick.
Mhm.
Before that, what was in the space actually was UK prototype. It was modeling around the area around Edinburgh during World War II.
Okay.
So radically different approach.
Right.
But the one thing that we sort of went off to, and this goes back to Lee and the back scenes to begin with, is you'll notice that the back scenes they're not as detailed as Lee wanted to do them. Lee is just, he could spend months painting this thing as works of art, but that wasn't what the purpose was. How many times have we gone to see somebody's layout and, oh, he's got the most fantastic buildings, or, oh, the track work is magnificent. Oh God, if there's one thing I hate in this hobby is hand laying track. It's a death sentence. And other people love it. Other people find it therapeutic. That's the beauty of this. The beauty of this is that you can always find something like this. I like soldering locomotives together out of brass, and people think that that's a death sentence. Everybody's got their thing.
Everybody's got their own favorite parts of the hobby. Exactly.
But when you're building a layout, especially one for ops, blend becomes very important.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. There are just a million flaws in this thing. That's the way it is, I certainly don't profess to be good.
Well, we're not going to build anything perfect. That's
no.
per se.
But if you do like a photo mural back scene, realize that it is a highly detailed thing. It's a photograph. Does it complement the rest of your scenery or not? Is the rest of it, or does it attract attention to itself?
Exactly. Does it draw your eye away from what you really want people to see?
Or want people to do, in this case, in an ops platform. And all the elements are here.
Mm-hmm.
There's scenery. Yeah, in O scale, yeah. But yeah, there's scenery, there's structures, there's everything's pretty much everything's weathered, everything's toned down, and it's made to blend. It's not made for one element to stand out and be showcased.
Right.
That's for somebody else to do, like Howard, who's got the talent to do that.
Oh yes.
For one thing, you got to know your limitations. For another thing, you got to know what what you love doing.
Right.
Besides designing layouts for operation, what I love doing is building models, which is kind of old-fashioned, and that's fine, but I love sitting down there and gluing little bits of styro together, or soldering up brass, painting, all that stuff like that. I like building models, But even then, you got to make sure that the models blend too.
Right.
Each element, it's all got to come together as a cohesive whole, because I want people paying attention to what they're doing.
Yes.
Not what they're seeing.
Right.
And if something's missing, or if something's bad, or if something's really, really good, any one of those three attract attention to that element.
Right.
And to be honest, it's not what I want happening. So it's made to blend. There are some things that are a bit simplistic, just because the element has to be there, but it has to blend.
Right.
Favorite example: weathering. People will people will go out and they'll find a photograph on the rail photo sites, which I just love. I can stare at those all day. They'll find a photograph, and then they'll turn around, they'll sit there, and they'll do chalks and streaks and little brushes that replicate every rust streak and every dent and everything like that. And guess what? The one thing that model railroaders universally have not accepted, where model builders in the other disciplines know this, is that weather and color don't scale.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. You can do something that is a perfect representative of the photograph, and you'll put it down on your railroad, and it will look garish as hell because you forgot that it doesn't color. One guy that wrote an article in Mainline Modeler years ago, a guy named Jim U. Daly. This is Kevin U. Daly's dad. I knew Jim for a long time. But Jim was one of these guys that got it. He wrote an article that's in one of the later Mainline Modelers about retinting prototypical colors so that they will visually scale.
Mm-hmm.
And the armor guys, for instance, they know this, and the plastic airplane guys and stuff, know about lightning color, depending on what scale you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Lightening that color so that when you're looking at it, you're looking at it from that distance. It says, for instance, I am right now 100 feet from this boxcar. What kind of haze and everything like that is between my eyeballs through that 100 feet filter of nasty atmosphere and lighting that's coming down there?
Mm-hmm.
And am I really interested in this, in like a Penzi car being color chip? This is Tuscan red right off the color chip from the BRR Technical and Hysterical Society. No, and the reason I'm not is because you don't see it that way, you don't perceive it that way. And it will refuse to blend.
And within a few months of being out, that's not that color anymore anyway.
Well, yeah, there is certainly that argument. No, it's not that color anymore. It's covered with stuff that isn't that color anymore. But the stuff it's colored with,
And the sun's bleached out the color
either.
Yeah.
It's all the light value, the clouds in the sky.
Oh yeah.
How much it's weathered.
Right.
Is it lacquer? Is it Duco or is it Dulux? Because if it's lacquer, if it's lacquer, Penzi cars that were painted in lacquer, infamous for turning pink.
Yeah. Yeah.
Penzi cars that were painted in fast-drying enamels or the early epoxies, the really early, epoxy-ish type stuff, notorious for turning either purple or extremely dark. They fade in totally different directions. So the photos are a guide, but don't weather to a photo if you're going to use it if it's a contest model, that's one thing. If you're going to use it on a layout, you're going to find out that it's too stark.
Right.
Because weathering doesn't scale.
Yeah.
Light behavior doesn't scale. You got to fake it.
Right.
Just some considerations, pitfalls, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know.
And the main thing about the hobby is really go out and have fun. Do what you want to do. Don't worry about whether somebody says, hey, it's not that color, not that color, it's not that Ray wouldn't have done it that way. You can't build anything in scenery that Mother Nature hasn't already done. It's just, you want to plan it for operations.
Bringing up a point. You're bringing up a point we haven't hit. All right?
Okay.
And that's is it prototypical or is it typical?
True.
I can find that old saw about there's a prototype for everything. Well, actually, no, there isn't a prototype for everything, but there's prototype for most things. But the thing is, if you build a model of a one-off car, you got to remember that's a one-off car. It's not typical.
Right.
Especially as I don't have room for a huge roster of stuff. I'm really, really looking for what is a typical piece of rolling stock, not necessarily what what I could still say was prototypical. I've got a photograph of it.
Right.
If it's a one-off, if you got two, if you got one-off just because it's very cool. I'll give you an example. This L&N scenario, okay? I've got an Seaboard Coastline C420 that I'm using for a switcher. It's over there.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to do like a whole bunch of the old, there was a great Alco migration on the L&N. A lot of it came from Seaboard, a lot of it, so it came from just about everywhere. Well, most of it ended up in Kentucky. As one-off, that's okay, but if you have just nothing but one-offs, you're not replicating what you think you're replicating.
Right.
And I'll fall victim to it too. Perfect example, right behind you. The recognizable scene on a layout that's supposed to be generic. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. But you know, that was the perfect solution to just this thing that was driving me scenically nuts about what to do with this corner.
Right.
And even though it, you know, there will be people that'll look at it and say, I know where that place is, because I have at least stolen the flavor of that place. And I shouldn't have done it, not on a generic layout. You've got to be really careful of that. But I did it just because it was the perfect solution.
Yeah, and it's all, you know, it's all what you really want to do. It's really, you know, planning for operations, make that as simple as you can for your operators, and just go out there and have fun. You know, that's what the hobby's all about. It's to occupy your time, spend your money, and
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can take what we've just said, and you can take this conversation for what you think it's worth.
Right. But it's just some of the things that we thought we could discuss and just banter back and forth on and things like that. So, thank you, Brian, for all your insights and allowing me to come over and video this, and hopefully will be helpful to some people.
Hopefully it'll be,
help some people do
at
some
least it'll get you
studying.
to think.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then, after that, you can look at that and say, well, you know, I do have the space to build something in that style that's not the you know, no, linear isn't a requirement.
Right.
There are other ways to skin this cat, and this is one of them.
Right.
And it is buildable. It's
Yes.
buildable in a space that, you know, a lot of people that would otherwise be sitting on a chair watching videos of me talking about this. You know, yeah, you can build it.
Yep.
You know, and you know, you can build it with average skills or learning skills as you go or whatever. But I'll tell you right now, when I started scenicking this thing, the last time I had actually got to a point, I used to edit one of the magazines I did for 10 years, and I've been in the industry for since the 80s. And when it's your vocation, it's not your hobby.
Right.
And so a lot of the layout building that I was doing was because I needed to write an article on this, or I needed to, I needed to turn around and proof this, that, or the other thing, stuff like that. This is the first one I built as a hobbyist since probably before I went in the Army. And certainly it's, you know, I think the last one I actually got to this point where I built scenery, we published in the old 48 to the foot, and that would probably have been done mid-80s or something like that. And the stuff that's available out for doing scenery is a lot different than what was out there then.
Oh yeah.
boy.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, I know exactly where people are saying when they say, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, to be absolutely honest, as far as doing the scenery on this thing, I don't know that I knew what I was doing either when I started. You know, and I just started on one end and just, and it flowed like a tide.
Right.
And I learned a lot while I was doing it.
Right.
But, you know, did I know how to do it just because I edited the magazine or something like that? No, afraid not, no.
Howard Zane said this, if you screw something up, you can unscrew it. So
It's-
easily, generally. Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
true.
know. So if you don't like it, the scenery material doesn't cost you that much money, just take it up and start over again.
Yeah, and it's not only true for scenery.
Well,
It's true for anything.
anything,
You know, people are
exactly.
afraid of soldering.
Yeah.
You know, but guess what? Brass is probably one of the most forgiving materials in the world. If you screw it up, well, you know, just heat it up, take it apart, clean it out or off, try it again.
Right.
You know,
So never be afraid to try something in the hobby. You know.
don't be afraid.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I think we're at like almost 50 minutes now. I'll have to break it into a couple segments, but
You would think. Yeah, that was kind of the point. I was thinking,
no, it's great. It's
50,
great.
50 minutes of me yelling at you. Oh, God.
Well, thanks again, Brian.
Well, yeah, I hope there was something useful in there. Or at
I
least
hope so too,
there's
yeah.
something in there that will say, I'm going to get excited and make things.
I learned a few things there, so it's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the shirt says.
Yeah, get excited and make things.
Get out of the armchair.
Right.
Put down the cat. Put down the tablet.
Yep. Get off YouTube.
That's
Yeah.
right. You know, make a cuppa and go build something.
There you go. All right. You all take care.
All right. Thanks
Bye.
for tolerating it.